please join me in welcoming Gloria Mwase. Gloria.
Thank you all so much for giving me this opportunity to come and present to you about some of the work that we've been doing across the country. I'm delighted to be here and to share with you what we've been doing, but also what some of our colleagues across the country have been doing, and to learn a lot from what you've been doing, because we know that there is a lot of innovation in the field. So you will note that on my title slide I say some efforts. That means that I don't know everything. And you probably are doing some really exciting and effective things as well in your state, in your institution, in your organization that I may not mention here, but see that as an opportunity to educate me later as I'm walking around and participating in some of the other sessions about the great work that you're doing. So here's what we're going to talk about very, very briefly. And I'm going to sprint through this because there's a lot to cover. There will be an opportunity for those of you who are interested to have some dialogue, some question and answers after this session in a breakout session. But I want to talk just briefly about why we need to focus on career pathways for lower skilled adults. What are some strategies for connecting adult education services to career pathways? Some examples of regional collaborations. I understand that many of you are trying to explore how to build these partnerships with key stakeholders, to talk about some of the national and state policy supports that are being put in place to help support your efforts on the ground, and then to talk just a little bit about some new trends in teaching and learning, which really aren't new to you, but they're new out there in the field, and I think there's a lot that you could bring to this larger conversation. So with that, I understand from the conference organizers that there are a diverse group of folks in the room. Some of you have been working on career pathways for many years. Others, this may be your first exploration of how to connect with career pathways. So I'm going to cover a little bit of basic information, but I'll also hopefully share something that will be useful for those of you who are more advanced. And the takeaways I hope you'll carry with you are that there are some strategies that you can utilize and some examples of how folks are implementing those strategies. There's a great opportunity for you to go back to your local communities, your organizations, your state, to really bring these models to where you're working and implement them. There are some resources available to support you in this, along with some other types of capacity building support, which we can talk about probably a little bit more in follow-up sessions. And hopefully you'll be inspired to know that your colleagues across the country are figuring this out. It is difficult to try something new. It's difficult to build relationships and partnerships where they don't currently exist, but it's completely doable, and these examples really demonstrate that. Okay, so Pat already told you about Jobs for the Future. We are a nonprofit organization. We try to help disadvantaged young people and adults get the education and skills training that they need to get good jobs. And we're not an adult education organization. We are a workforce development and education organization. We don't do direct service. But we do see adult education as the center of much of the work that we do at Jobs for the Future. And that's because we're focused on lower skilled adults. And you can't really advance lower skilled adults, be they young people or older adults, without addressing their academic skills, which brings us pretty quickly back to adult education. So you are at the center of a lot of the work that we do. You're also partners with a lot of the stakeholders that we engage with to help support the advancement of lower skilled adults. So why we need to do this, and I think most of you know this, so I'll sprint through this really quickly, but the reality is that for individuals, adult learners in our programs to get to family-sustaining careers, they're going to need some kind of post-secondary credential. And for the purposes of this presentation, when I say post-secondary credential, I mean that in the most general sense. That is some kind of credential that they obtain after high school or some kind of high school equivalency. It may be in a community college, it may be in some other type of training program where they get an industry recognized credential, but the point is that just getting that high school credential is not sufficient. We also know that many of our adult learners, and this has been painfully obvious through the latest PIAC findings, we know many of our adult learners fall way behind in reading, writing, and math, and I think if they were really exploring language that would be an issue for many adult learners as well. And yet we know that many of the jobs that pay family-sustaining wages will require some post-secondary credential, nearly two-thirds in just a few years, and that two-thirds of our adults lack the credentials to get these jobs. And moreover, many of them are working already, but they're in low-wage, dead-end jobs that will not allow them to sustain their families. So clearly something needs to happen if we're not going to push all of these families or keep all of these families into declining economic opportunity. What we're seeing across the country is that you're having budget cuts at the federal and state level that are reducing the programs and reducing the capacity of the programs to address the skill needs of lower skilled adults. As I mentioned, a number of these jobs require higher level skills. There's an increased focus on post-secondary credentials, and even just to get a GED or get into a post-secondary education and training program requires higher level skills. And on top of all of this, many of our adult learners don't have a clear map for where to go to get these skills, who can help them to achieve the credentials and the career goals that they have. We know that our educational pathways are disconnected, and this is really across the pipeline. Whether you're looking at K-12, whether you're looking at K-12, adult ed, community college, developmental education, the pathway is very disconnected. There are lots of leaks of students at every level who fall out of the pipeline, who don't progress to any kind of credential or degree. And what we need to create is a much more streamlined approach that links adult ed and GED programs to articulated career pathways in post-secondary institutions and other training providers that help them accelerate their skill building, because we know that the longer it takes for them to reach the goal of getting that credential, the more likely it is that life will intervene and they won't make it there. So we want to look at accelerated career pathways. We also want to look at comprehensive supportive services. We know that our adult learners have many life challenges, and without the supports that help retain them in your programs, no matter how great and effective your instruction is, they won't be successful because they won't be in your classroom long enough to really benefit from your program. So that's all of what you already know. A little bit about career pathways. For those of you who are who are new to this concept, it's really just about aligning programs and services to help adult learners move from lower skills to higher skills, from lower level credentials to higher level credentials, and from lower paying jobs to higher paying jobs. It's that simple. And there are a number of strategies which I tried to boil down to their simplest essence. And there are a number of different ways that these programs are being implemented across the country. They look differently, but if you were to boil it all down to three strategies, these are the three. The adult education programs are engaging with career pathways by really trying to provide greater career exploration and alignment with employment demand, providing that information to your adult learners, many of whom, just like young people, don't have much of a clue, much understanding about what careers are in demand in their regional labor market, what skills are required to get access to those careers, and how they can get that skills training. So they need some help with identifying those opportunities and accessing those opportunities. We also see adult education programs building these bridge programs that are connected to various types of training, whether they be in a post-secondary institution or in an employer organization or some other type of training provider, but really trying to help go from the high school credential and level of skills to the higher level that's needed to be successful in training. And then the third area where I'll spend a bit of time is on these integrated pathways that align ABE, ESL, GED preparation with occupational training at the same time. So we'll talk about that, but I just want to let you know that these models are being implemented in multiple occupational pathways across the country, so in every sector, across adult learners with multiple skill levels, so even lower level learners can benefit from some of these programs, in programs that are serving job seekers as well as those that are helping incumbent workers advance, and programs that are housed in multiple organizations. So this is not just for community colleges. It can be organizations that are CBOs in independent school districts, whatever the case might be. Okay, so visual sometimes helps. And I just wanted to illustrate an example of a career pathway and point out a few features here. First, this is an integrated pathway, which, as I mentioned, okay, there we go, thank you. So this is an integrated pathway, and I was trying to use the laser, but I may not, it doesn't show up. Okay, so I'll just talk it through. And it's being implemented by one of our college partners in Texas, South Texas College. It shows a number of things. First, the first level of the pathway. What you'll see in the inverted triangle is that as you go up each stage of that triangle, it's like a career ladder. So students are getting additional stackable credentials. So they can get CNA, medication aid, phlebotomy, a marketable skills award, which I'll tell you about that in a moment, on up to an associate's degree level level certification in nursing. And you could even map this to 4-year and beyond, but this was for a community college. So these credentials stack. That means at every level, students are not repeating instruction or credits that they are getting at the prior lower level. So CNA folds into medication aid, and those credits carry over into the phlebotomy as they add on certifications. The second thing to note about this is that as you increase the number of credentials, the level of credentials, the salary increases as they move up a career pathway. And these numbers represent what the salary would be for the South Texas region. Of course, they vary across the country in your regions. The third thing to note is that they're really aligning adult ed with the occupational training here. So you see at the lowest rung, they're doing an integrated pathway where concurrently they're offering GED instruction for students in the CNA pathway so that they can get that high school credential, which is often necessary for employment in the healthcare arena, along with that first occupational credential. You'll also see with the College Ready Academy that the adult ed services don't stop once they get that first level credential in this model. It could stop, but in this model, they continue because the goal is to get these students college ready, beyond just getting the GED, get them college ready so that they can go into an associate's degree level program if they want to. So that little line up there that says TSI complete, the TSI is the college placement test for the state of Texas, and so when students want to go into the LVN, the practical nursing program, they finally have to take that college placement test and need to pass it in order to be able to enroll in that program. What South Texas College has also done is build on top of the integrated pathway a bridge, and I'll blow this up a little bit. And so they determined that actually being dual language on the border, this is on the Texas-Mexico border, is an asset, not a deficit for their adult learners. So the issue was, how do you help those adult learners take the Spanish skills, because they're mostly Spanish speaking, that they have, and translate that into technical Spanish so they can use that in the healthcare setting. So they added some contextualized technical Spanish instruction along with some contextualized English language development, all focused on healthcare, in addition to the GED preparation leading to that certified nursing assistant initial credential. So you get the point I'm trying to make, that there are many ways that you can put together the pieces, but the point is that through adult education services, they're creating an on-ramp for students who otherwise would not have the skills to access these pathways. All right, so I'm going to talk very briefly about each of the three strategies I noted before and try to mention a few resources that you can address. So one is something called Counseling to Careers. It's a toolkit that Jobs for the Future has developed, but it's accessible to anyone. And what we do is work with adult education providers, community colleges, other types of programs to help them do a little work as staff and as faculty of these programs to identify what are the best bets for your students. So many of you play a counseling role, a career counseling role, whether formally or informally, as your students come to you and they ask you questions about where do I go to get a job or get a better job or what do I need to do. And so many of you may not know the answers to those questions because this isn't your area of expertise. But we have created a tool that allows you to gather some of this information and to then be able to share it with your students. You gather it from local labor market analysis, including conversations with employers, as well as some conversations with post-secondary institutions. It's a little bit of a research project, but it also is implicitly a partnership building project, because what happens is, as you're talking with these employers or post-secondary institutions about, I just want to understand more about what you're looking for and what kinds of skills and what kinds of opportunities are available to my students, what kind of supports do you offer to them. You create a relationship that allows you to build the partnerships that connect what you're doing to the career pathways that these employers or post-secondary institutions are offering. And I wish I had time, I don't, but if you come to the breakout session, I'll show you an example of a best bet profile that these adult ed instructors and staff create and then are able to share with their students. And this is just the front page of one. It talks about what makes this job hot, interesting, in demand, what you do in it, what employers are looking for, where you can go to get additional skills training, what the career ladder looks like. It's a great tool that anyone can develop. There are a number of other products which I don't have time to go into in depth, and so I've just provided URL links to them. And by the way, I will make these slides available to Jane, and she will get them out through some dissemination mechanism to everyone, so don't feel you have to write fiercely to capture all of these. You know, many of you may have heard of the Integrating Career Awareness into ESL ABE classrooms tool that World Education has developed. My Next Move is a DOL online product that helps your students do career exploration as well. So take a look at those things. And then we actually have been utilizing something called real-time labor market information, which is really exciting because it takes job postings off of the internet that employers are actually seeking for occupations that employers are actually seeking to fill, and aggregate that information in particular regions. And so what that gives us is in real time today, what are employers in this region looking for when they want to hire, you know, a radiology tech? What kinds of skills, what kinds of credentials, what other knowledge and experience do people need in order to get these jobs? And then you can utilize that as part of your career counseling as well. So just a little bit about bridge programs. In most instances, when you look at career pathway programs, the emphasis is on contextualizing instruction to those particular career pathways. And we can talk a lot about contextualization, which I don't have time to do right now, but I'd be happy to discuss later. But that's not always the case. And so there are bridge programs that you can develop that are not contextualized, but that still connect adult learners to career pathways. This is one example from the state of Texas. They developed, in partnership with a wide range of different types of adult ed programs, these intensive college readiness programs, which engage students in about 15 hours of instruction per week over 6 to 8 weeks of really intensive instruction around reading, writing, and math. Many of these students have GEDs or high school diplomas, but were not college ready. Others, excuse me, were close to completing the GED and just needed a little bit of extra support. But all of them, without these programs, would have fallen into developmental education programs. And so you can see that they've really increased the skill levels, especially in math, which is one of the areas where our adult learners often struggle. It also happened to increase the retention for these students. They were much more engaged. About 45% of them actually transitioned on into the college, which is much higher than just GED to college transitions, which are around, for the state of Texas, around 13%. So again, some success with bridge programs. Another example is Davison County Community College in North Carolina. They have an adult ed program within the college. It's federally funded, has to meet all the same requirements as you do. And what they decided to do is we want to create some on-ramps into our occupational training programs at the college. So they developed contextualized bridge programs for each of 16 different pathways the last time I counted with them. And they used the college level textbook and training resources as the guide for what they offered in the classroom. So they started with the college level work, and then they scaffolded the material so that students who were at much lower levels could build their skills towards mastering that college level material. You can imagine how exciting that would be for one of your students to know that they're actually working with material from a college level textbook or training manual, and they're doing well on it. And so because she's using college level material, many of these students transition directly into college level programs without the need for further remediation, and complete a certificate, the first level certificate, within 1 year. There are a couple of guides out there. These are two of my favorite. There are probably more than these, but these are two of my favorite for how to build bridge programs in a very step-by-step process. And so you can take a look at these and learn more about some of the strategies that you need to deploy to develop them in your own organizations. So last strategy I want to talk about are integrated pathways. And first I want to say that there are different models of integrated pathways. So whenever someone says integrated pathways, people automatically think about Washington State and IBEST. And that's wonderful because IBEST has had tremendous success. They have had great accomplishment with taking adult ed students and helping to transition them into, getting them credentials and transitioning them into the workforce. However, they're not the only model out there. And others have built on that model, and including not only different approaches to team teaching, but also different approaches to aligning integrated instruction. So it doesn't all have to be team teaching in the same classroom at the same time. It doesn't all have to be as expensive as what Washington State, spends to operate these programs, because they pay their adult ed instructors at the same level as their college level instructors, which would be cool if that happened across the state, I'm sure, across the states. But because you have adult ed programs that already exist that are just aligning with occupational training programs that are already existing, the cost does not have to be prohibitive. It's just a matter of bringing folks together, helping them to do some co-planning, some co-curriculum development, and really mapping out who's teaching what and when. So here's one model. This is the concurrent model that I was just speaking of, where you have aligned ABE, ESL, GED preparation that is contextualized with the technical training, but it's happening simultaneously, or during the same period, but not in the same classroom at the same time. So this is one model, and Texas is many of the programs in Texas are implementing this approach, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. And then this is more of the IBEST model and the Accelerating Opportunity model, where you have some instructional overlap with the adult ed instructor and the technical instructor, leading to that first credential and a career. And of course, supportive services, as I noted, is essential no matter which model you utilize. Across the country, we've identified about 15 different states that are implementing these types of career pathway programs that I've just been talking about. And here's some just briefly information about the colleges and the programs. And in many instances, these institutions either have an adult ed program that is federally funded, or they're partnering with an external adult ed provider who's providing the adult ed services. Some of the key elements, we could get into a lot more discussion about these, but really looking at acceleration strategies that, again, speed up the time to completion for adult learners. Aligning with the labor market demand, we've talked a little bit about that. The comprehensive supports, we've talked about that as well. But this institutional realignment that happens both internally and externally is critically important. No one program can put together all of the pieces that are necessary to help adult learners really succeed. You have to have partnerships both within colleges, but certainly between adult ed providers and colleges, and employers and one-stop centers and a number of other partners. And of course, monitoring how your students are performing so that you can adjust your program implementation likewise. So I want to talk about two quick initiatives. Some of you may have heard of Accelerating Opportunity. It's a 7-state initiative that JFF is helping to manage. It's focused on integrated pathways that are credit level pathways where there is team teaching with 25% instructional overlap. So the adult ed instructor and the technical instructor are in the classroom together 25% of the time. And so some of the results that are coming out of these programs, in just brief, you have more lower skill students, and these students are 6th grade and above, who are coming in. They're earning credits, they're earning credentials, and they're moving into employment, is the summary of the story there. And there are a number of supports that are being provided at the institutional and at the state level to support these types of programs. The first is a real culture shift, and this is critically important at every level. We all have to believe that all of our students can succeed and get the credentials and certifications that they need to get good jobs. All of us. All of them. It may take some a little longer than others, but all of them can do it. And that's critically important. It's not just on the post-secondary side, even on the adult ed side, we sometimes hear this lack of faith and lack of belief. And that transmits itself to your students when you don't feel that they can succeed in these types of programs. Leadership buy-in at every level is pretty self-explanatory, but engaging instructors in successful, effective team teaching partnerships, whether that's in the classroom together or not. And I mean partnerships where each instructor is seen as equal and bringing value to the instructional process, not that the adult ed instructor is somehow the support instructor or the tutor or the teacher's aide or whatever the case might be. And so that kind of partnership development has to be fostered. We've talked about employer engagement, a lot of professional development around how do you develop these partnerships well, how do you develop the curriculum, how do you use the data to improve these programs, and of course, how do you fund them? And there are a number of strategies. I'll share a few in just a moment. We're already starting to see some of these shifts that I talked about, changing attitudes about students being able to succeed. I love to hear stories, and we hear them often from our partners in the field who say, our adult ed student who came in without a GED or a high school diploma at a 6th grade skill level, they have the highest GPA in this class. They were on the dean's list. They have the highest GPA in the whole college or in the whole program this semester. And we're hearing stories like that. It's because these students are incredibly motivated. They want to succeed. They want to attain these credentials and create a better quality of life for their families. All they need is some support and some guidance, and they're being given that. We're seeing changes in the attitudes of faculty who start out saying, why are you bringing us these students who are not ready for college, who are dumbing down our program, who are going to fail, and now say, we want more of them. Can you bring more of those students? Can you work with our students who are not in your program? Can you start another program over here that provides the same kind of support to these students? And we hear over and over and over again, and I wish I had time to show you some videos, about students talking about how these types of programs are changing their lives, how they not only believe in themselves, they see their success, their children see their success, and now want to go forward and pursue their own careers as well. Partnerships are key, and I just want to reemphasize this again. All of these colleges and institutions had to develop partnerships with workforce boards and career centers and employers and a wide range of different folks. And reaching out to these partners can sometimes be difficult. You may not know what door to knock on, who to talk with, what to say. We can talk a little bit more about that later throughout the day if you'd like. And just very briefly about Accelerate Texas, which is very similar to Accelerating Opportunities. Again, focused on integrated pathways, except they're doing a few different things. One is that they focus on much more of a lower skill level, so the breadth is smaller, of skill level is narrower. They are focused on continuing education pathways and not just credit level pathways, much more focused on the concurrent enrollment model as opposed to the team teaching in one classroom model. But essentially the models are pretty much the same, and you're getting some of the same results. Accelerate Texas is in Texas, 21 colleges and their adult ed providers in Texas, like in many other places. Some adult ed is in the colleges, some is in ISDs, some of it is in community-based organizations. So they're getting impressive results in getting students through to completion of credentials, many of them moving on towards higher level 2-year credentials, and getting them enrolled into actually getting them employed in the labor market. And this is just for 1-year cohort, but you can see that many of these students do go on. And the dark blue slice are students who after completing one credential continued on for further education or were employed in their area of training. So you see that there are some successes even for the many English language learners that are also in that state who are taking advantage of these programs. Okay, so that's just a very, very brief overview about what some of the strategies are. I can talk a lot more about some of the components later in the follow-up session at 10:30.